Hey Wendy, how are you?
How are you, Grant? How are you?
I'm doing
Welcome.
good. I'm good. I'm really excited to talk shop with you. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about how to develop mindset, coach mindset, but in different areas of all of our lives, whether if it's in
Right.
sports, in business, in life. You've got a super really compelling story on how you've got into this business of coaching mindset and high performers. So I'm really excited to have you on my show.
I'm so excited to be here. Welcome. Thank you for having me, Grant.
Yeah, you bet. So why don't we set the tone? Why don't we get things started with one of my favorite topics, which is mental toughness. So when you think about being mentally tough or mental toughness, what does that mean to you?
Gosh, what does it mean to me? I think someone who's mentally tough, or if I think of my experience, it's when you are come across either a point in, it could be in performance of sports, business, life, where you come in the crossroads where you either failed and you have tools to um, inside of you. It doesn't even have to be specific. That you're just not going to stop. You're going to figure it out. Like your mindset is saying to yourself, I know I've come across an obstacle or a failure, or I don't even like to say the word failure because it's there to teach us. So I've come across this like moment in time that doesn't feel great. And what am I going to do? Am I going to sit and just throw my hands up and quit? Or am I going to keep pushing to see where my next path is, where my next step is? And I think when I think it's the way they perceive moments like that. Anybody who with mental toughness has this persistence, this relentlessness about themselves that they can have moments of letdown, but they don't let it take them over.
Right.
Um, so I think that's what I'm thinking. If you ask me off the top of my head, yes.
Right, right. Well, the reason why I ask that question is because when you think about words like mental toughness, love, joy, um,
Mm,
discipline, like we all have we all understand it, but we all have our own our own understanding of those words. So I've had over 200, episodes of the show, and almost every single answer has been different. There's been one or two
yeah.
that have been very, very similar. So it's really interesting to find like to hear what people think, because there's a different internal representation of it. So, and it's just fascinating to hear that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's everybody, again, we all are unique and we all have our own experiences that lead us to what we believe is mentally tough, whether you ask what is success. Like, I think everybody has their own perception of how they
Right.
see that. But I think if it would be interesting to even take a tally of like, where are the commonalities in that mental toughness? But yeah, I do believe it's those moments in where you can be tested, and how
Yeah.
do you handle those moments?
Yeah. I hear a lot of the commonality is I hear a lot of resilience or
Hmm.
resiliency, and bouncing back and withstanding. Those are a lot of, but there's been some really creative, like there's some people have really, really thought about it. So they know
Yeah.
their answer. So it's been really cool to, to just kind of investigate it and hear it and hear people's thoughts on it.
And I actually just even saying that, like any of this work, I think part of it is like we think we know, but we don't always have the words to express to really own it. So I think it's interesting whether we ask what success is, what mental toughness is, to get the language what you believe that is
Yeah,
important. So the
exactly.
language.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And we're going to talk about here pretty soon. We're going to talk about the inner voice because I know you spent a lot of
Hmm.
time in tapping into that superpower and really owning our own language and having a better relationship with I call it champion talk, but that language, the inner voice, the inner dialogue.
Yeah, yeah, so
So
important.
when you think about your whole career, whether if it is as a high performance coach, golfing, in the workplace, as a mother, any part of your career, can you share that monumental moment where you had to be mentally tough? So what sticks out throughout your whole life, your whole career, where you had to be mentally
Okay. Well, there's two
tough?
times, but you want me to go to the sports time or the motherhood time? Because they're very
Hey,
specific.
hey,
Um,
whatever resonates with you.
okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go the motherhood time. So, it's funny because here I am talking about with you, who I know you focus a lot with athletes, but it shines the light to me. This story, it shines the light of it doesn't matter what you're doing. We all you still have to have the mentality.
Yeah.
So I'm 40. I wanted you haven't heard my story, but I took up golf at the age of 29, and I became a professional and went after going on the tour for 7 years. And my other dream, was to be a mom of six. And there I was at 40, after playing golf in my 30s, and I found myself single. And I'm like, okay, um, what am I going to do here? So always the thought, oh, I'm gonna go down this road and have a baby on my own, and I kind of kept putting it off. I mean, if that's I think as an athlete, sometimes we're like, oh, we'll do that later, or as in life, we'll do that later, and your clock is ticking. And this is very like deep for this probably podcast, but like basically what happened was my brother had a baby, and at 5 weeks old, the baby was diagnosed with cancer. And
Wow.
I was holding that baby at 5 weeks old, and I saw this baby fighting, and I'm thinking to myself, where am I fighting in my life to do the thing I wanted to do, which is to create my family? And there was like that point in life, like I wasn't willing to wait anymore. And so I went down this road, and really what came to me is like, it's no different than taking up my golf career at the age of 29. I surround myself around the best. I work my tail off. I eat well. Like I had to do everything in my power because there were so many people that were disbelievers, even though they loved me. And I had to get really clear what I wanted, and create boundaries for those that didn't see the possibility of what I was trying to do. And a year later, I had my baby girl on Christmas Day, December 12th,
Wow.
2012. That now she's 9. But I would say like to have the grit, like in your mind, you're like, this is crazy. Like, how can I have a kid on my own? I didn't even live in a home. Like I was in transition of living because I was in the teaching world, and I'm living in Arizona as an athlete. I was like in two spots.
Yeah.
But I think I mean the symbol to me is like, it does not matter whether you're playing a sport or you're trying to do something extraordinary in life, to run a business or whatever, or you come across a transition that you didn't choose, that hardship. But it's that like you're so sure inside your gut that this is the route you're supposed to take, that
Yeah.
nothing's going to stop you. And I did that in golf at 29, and I did that to have my kid at 40. So similar.
Wow. And I
Yeah.
know there's so many, as you look at that experience, that decision, that choice, there's so many ways to look at incredible lessons. But what comes
Mhm.
up for me is the willingness to show up and being vulnerable. No matter
Mm.
if you're 29 doing a new sport or you're having a baby later in life, it's about, are you willing to show up and be vulnerable? And anytime, I don't care if it's sports, I don't care if it's in the workplace, relationships, family. When you do that, when you actually show up in the moment and you're vulnerable, I always say victory goes to the vulnerable.
Yeah.
'Cause it's hard. Shit's hard sometimes. Just it's easy to say, "Hey, be vulnerable." Yeah, when you're in it, and it can be really tough. So I applaud you on
Because
that.
there are no guarantees. I mean, even
Right,
when I was, when you talk vulnerable, I mean, I took up a sport at 29, left my whole career when I had my master's teaching in Harlem in my 20s, and I took up this sport, and like, I mean, the everybody's look on their face was like, "What are you doing?" And I was
right,
so persistent that I really had to be clean with like, first of all, most people that have opinions, they don't mean it.
Right.
They're coming from their own experience. But like if you have it in your gut to go for something, and the only way you can do something extraordinary like that, or to go for playing on a really Division 1 college team, or play pro, you have to like there's sacrifice in it.
Oh
So it's
yeah.
like all in. And I think that I learned a lot about myself by doing those things, whether I failed, which I spent 7 years not making it on the LPGA. But I don't consider that failure. I consider it my journey, and
Right.
it brought me somewhere else.
Yeah. It's something similar. I remember when I went back to school at the age of 40 to get my master's in sports psychology.
Oh, wow.
And I
Awesome.
remember I was at this dinner with my wife, and it was a work dinner, and her boss was he was flabbergasted. He's like, let me understand this. You're 40 years old, you're going back to school. He goes, you have a great job, you're making tons of money, and you're gonna leave all of that later in life. He's like, that doesn't seem like the right decision. I'm like, for who?
Yeah, exactly. I
I'm
mean,
like,
that is the question.
for who? For
Yep.
me, it makes sense, and I'm willing to commit and show up. And it was like, has there been hard days and months? Sure, like 100%. But I never regret it. And sure, it was a little weird at first going back to school at the age of 40 when everybody was a lot younger. But I got over that. But it's just funny. It was his opinion.
Well, in those moments, like something draws you to do that, it's because you're listening to like what you need, because inside your brain you're saying this doesn't make sense, but like something's making you do it, whether I'm having a kid at 40 or I'm taking up a sport or you're shifting careers. Something's pulling at you, and of course it makes no sense from the outsider because you're the one who's yearning for that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about our path as coaches, and I know I talked a little about mine just now, when you think about your coaching, guiding, because we were talking about that earlier,
Mhm.
um, what drew you into to coach? And I'm really interested to find out the name of your company, Live Your June.
Yeah.
So what drew you into coaching, and tell us a little bit more about Live Your June.
So I think I've always wanted to help people, number one. So in my 20s, I was teaching in Harlem emotionally disturbed kids. So I've always had this yearning to help people. Was I good at it in my 20s? Probably not. Even though I went to school for it, I think through experience, you gain confidence of how you can pull out someone else's gifts or someone else's talent. Um, but how I got drawn to it is I think my biggest thing is I didn't have the coach. Like I didn't have the reason I took up golf at 29 is because in my head I knew I left so much on the table as an athlete. I mean, I could have played Olympics. Like I felt like I could. I was very humble, but I played Division 1 lacrosse. I played every sport but golf. I came from a big family of six. I was in the middle. And at 10, I told my mom, I want to be a tennis pro. I'm going to be like Chris Evert. Like, I know I can. And
Yeah.
she brought me once a week to a really good tennis player, pro in town that worked with John McEnroe. But after a year, kind of like that faded. Um, and I know my mom's plate was full, but in my head, like that was my dream. And then it was like, there was no coach that said, wow, she's got something. Really, I mean, how I made Division 1 lacrosse was simply out of raw talent. There was nobody guiding me or pushing me or believing in me. So I think that's why I knew when I had that opportunity at 29, where it was just one day that two guys told my dad she's really good playing golf, and I hated golf. He said try it, and I was like, wow, maybe I should. So I think the
Right.
coaching part is like really, it's like I want to be the coach that I didn't have.
Right.
Um, and I want to be a leader because I know the world right now. We whether it's sports, teachers, um, bosses, moms and dads, like we have to step up and be the best leaders that we can be to be the role models for future leaders. So Live Your June is all about that. So my dad's name was Joseph Jr. He passed almost 19 years ago. My daughter's name is Josephine June, Josie June.
Uh,
And my belief is once you live into your uniqueness or really get connected to your own essence of who you are, no matter what avenue you take, sports, career, craft, whatever craft you take, you have to connect to you and take in those influencers that have left their mark on you. Be the best you can be so you can leave your bold mark for future generations. And that is like what June is all about, leaving your mark, leaving your imprint.
wow,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. And I know you're big into philosophy. From a
Mm-hmm.
coaching perspective, is your philosophy much different from your belief? What's your philosophy as far as when you're coaching clients?
So my philosophy is it really starts with disrupting your norm. So when things get comfortable, we're not really growing in my or I know when I get kind of complacent or in mediocrity and we all can get in states like how do I stir the pot?
Yeah,
So it's to me, it's disrupt your norm and instigate your soul, because your answers, my answers, your clients' answers, they're all different, and you can go to other people for advice, but you really have to look in to get the answer that you're looking for. And I'm not talking from it doesn't have to be grandiose either. It has to be like what resonates with you from the basics of like what's the best sleep, how much sleep do you need to be the
yeah,
best performer, how much time do you need to be silent to like get your thoughts out, how much do you have to practice without the team extra, like I don't know what you need, you have to fit, that's part of instigating what works for you.
got
So I think the philosophy, I made it pretty long, but the philosophy is my philosophy is disrupt your norm, instigate your soul so I can be my best self to help others do the same, basically.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And
Yeah.
being in the roles that we are, I mean, true, we're in service, and I know out of all the roles in the world, and I learned this later in life, because I was one of those me before we type people, and then I did a huge shift on the importance of we,
Mm-hmm.
and so and being in service. So I feel like it doesn't matter what role you're in, like, as long as you're in service. It to me, it's just like it's where true vibration for me at least exists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when you think about being in service in your role, no matter who your client is,
Mm-hmm.
just I'm going to get into the mind of Wendy here.
Okay.
Describe
Yeah.
like what does that feel like when you're fully
Oh,
in
yeah.
service?
Um, for me, it actually brings me energy. I do a lot of beyond my coaching work. I work for a charity called Golf for Africa with Betsy King, who's a Hall of Famer on the LPGA. She's won 32 events, and she started this charity back in 2007. So I've been involved since 2000. I went to Africa in 2007, but been on the board since 2009. And how I describe what you're asking is when I've been to Africa twice and when I'm over there, I mean these people have nothing. And when you can be in the presence of people that have nothing and have such gratitude because I'm doing like the simplest thing to just make put a smile on their face, let alone we're giving clean water. Um, from that thing to being on the street and making someone smile who looks like they're having a bad day. It sounds simple, but like those things make me feel energized, like vibrant. And when I can get a little, we all can get caught in our heads and in our own like little story of pity party or how life is tough and all this stuff. If you get in a, I feel like if you're listening and you have a moment of struggle or stuck or feeling frustrated, all you have to do is do something of service that can
Yeah,
shift your energy.
Totally.
And it's easier said than done. It's not like I own it. I'm not saying I own it. It's just something I'm aware of, even though I'm even in the service industry of helping others. It's still I have to do stuff on a daily basis. That's shifts my energy. It fuels me, really, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had multiple times throughout my career people ask me like, "What's it like to be in service?" And I was like, "Well, have you ever seen a, I don't know, 4-month-old puppy, and when it
Mm,
sees its owner and the tail is wagging, it's just so happy, doesn't even know what, sometimes they don't know what to do with themselves because they're just full of joy." And I go, that
yeah,
that's when I'm in service, and especially when I'm working with clients that are just bought in. They're also surrendering, and they're being vulnerable, and they're just cracking up with their chest and just sharing everything. I'm just like, this is the shit. To me, I'm like,
yeah.
this is it. And
I honestly, I have to say, I get chills. Like I do. I think no, it's just I also think we all have our gifts, right? Like we all have our gifts. So, you have a gift to serve in the way you're serving. I have a gift. Everybody, some gift could be someone who's, I just popped in my head, this Brendan Crawford, who's the Giants. You know Brendan Crawford,
oh
probably if you're
yeah,
a
oh
Giant.
yeah, oh yeah,
So we know him through family, friends, and like just like if that's your gift, you're also touching other people because if you're a singer, like it doesn't. To me, it's like knowing what your gift is and continuing to serve to make the world a better place.
exactly.
I get a little deep here in the athletic world.
Oh, it's funny. There's so many times when it doesn't matter if it's me. I definitely need to know who my audience is. But when we're doing this work, all this stuff we do is actually it's energy work. Yes, it's mental skills and there's all these things, but it's the core of it is energy, and
Hmm.
so it's very spiritual. And so I was just working not too long ago with a CrossFitter that's getting ready for the CrossFit Games, and she was like, "Man, you're getting deep. This is pretty spiritual." I'm like, "It is. It is
Hmm.
spiritual." Um,
Yeah,
and when people can connect it at that level, it's really cool. Different kind of
that's where the
magic comes
flow is.
out. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that is the magic. I mean, honestly, like you can do all the performance stuff that's logical, but when you unlock that spirituality and the energy, I mean, we're energy human beings. So if we can get out of our own way of what blocks us from doing what's naturally, I mean, look at a perfect example. Look at like a lion and how they operate and how they move. They're not thinking. They're like within their body,
yeah,
operating. And if they're not alert and awake and energetic, not all the time. They're like purposely calm and purposely, on the hunt. But
yeah,
that's the saddest part when I see sometimes when I look around and I'm walking around and I see people not activating their bodies.
yeah.
That's like lacking energy. And I'm talking just to go to Starbucks. I'm not talking even a sports way.
Right,
You
right.
look around and see the people that demand a room with that don't have to say anything. It's because their energy is so like I believe in it. Like energy is everything, and you affect the people around you. We are energy. We're connected more than we no more than we realize.
Exactly.
So just yeah, it's an interesting topic of energy.
What do you think? Um, what do you think the hardest part is about your job within coaching?
It goes back to it's trust. Like I think it goes back to what we were talking about before we really officially got on when we were doing an intro talk.
Yeah,
I think people have perceptions of what they think my profession is, your profession. I think I just I really my hardest part. I wish people would more be open to because that's where the like that's where the magic is, to trust, and I think that's where also I as a coach have to like if it's not a mesh per client, I can't force it. I
right.
can't force someone to like want because I have such passion. Like I want to help you,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
if you can't, I can only do so much if someone's not going to meet me, it just can't happen. It has to, I can hold the space for a while, but if you're fighting it and you're kind of like, oh, this is bullshit, or, excuse my language, but if
No,
this is
no.
like, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in this energy work, then you're not the person for me. You maybe need someone that talks a different language.
Right.
I think the hardest part is like when people already have preconceived opinions of what this performance energy work is.
Right.
Um, because then they're already blocked before they come in. They're
Exactly.
like,
Yep.
"What's this?" You know, and
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part. Is like, I know I have good rapport with people. I know you. I can feel your energy. I don't know you that well, but I
Yeah.
like as we got on the phone, it's like easy.
Yeah.
But some people come with already a protection wall.
Yeah.
And I just wish we would more be open because that's where the possibilities are. You know.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
It my younger years, it was it took me a while to get into the like I'm ready when you are, and I have nothing on it. If this ain't for you, that's cool. Like that's actually okay. And it took the first couple of years. I was like, this you don't like it. It's not connecting. It's not resonating. Then it must be me. And I had to learn that. And now and it's man, talk about freedom. Um,
And yeah, I want to share a story of a one of my really good one of my phenomenal coaches I worked with when I played golf. Their names are Lynn Marriott and Pia Nilsson. Pia Nilsson worked with Annika Sorensen for a while, but their company's name is Vision 54 because they believe that you can shoot 54 if you can get a birdie every hole, that's 54. And they used to train me, and they were different. I also worked with Butch Harmon underneath his son Claude III, and that group, and they were very technical. And this other group, Vision 54, was they were always asking open-ended questions. They were always getting me to learn how I learn as a learner, and I was always looking for someone to give me the answers. I
yeah,
because I was late in the game. I need help. I like I lost something one summer, and they were like over in Sweden. I'm like, you're leaving me, and really they weren't. They were getting me to own my own way, and when the struggle, how do you handle the struggle where I'm not just going for them like help me for technical or whatever, you know what I mean? So they were really forced me to own who I am as
right.
a learner and the struggles. So it's a very, I mean, people, those type of coaches are rare, very open-ended coaching, open-ended questions, getting that player or that person to think. Bosses like that are rare. Like failure's okay, like let's learn. You got to take a risk, and we need to embrace that. That's where the growth is.
Oh man, so much when you have a coach or a leader or a guide who is kind of celebrating your failures.
Mm,
Because it wasn't too long ago where I had it'll take me too long to talk about the whole story, but it was collectively as a group something wasn't going well in the moment. And I
mm,
remember it was actually my mentor looked around and he said it with conviction. He goes, "Hey, I know everything was really tough tonight. I know everything was falling apart." And
mm,
but this is what greatness is all about. And he said it, and I'm looking at him going, "Holy shit!" Like
mm.
he's like, "So we just talked about what we learned, right? So we just got better. You can't control it anymore." He goes, "But this is what greatness looks like. How do we become great? It's because of these moments." And I'm like, "Oh my!" I'm like, so it just, I played football for 13 years and coached a lot of football, and but everybody wants to be perfect. You want to eliminate those failures, but to really kind of
Yep.
celebrate and be in it and go, "This is what makes me great." And I'm like,
Yep.
aha, super cool.
And it's not missing those moments, whether it's a kid that fails or like, my daughter's 9. There's moments like, do you reprimand or do you actually like embrace like what do we get out of this like moment,
Yes.
and to shine the light and like it's okay. Like we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna have moments of struggle. Like how do we handle those moments? Um, yeah, it starts from the very beginning. I'll say that as a mom. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, totally.
Ah,
Exactly. Well, and when you think about those moments too, and I wanna segue into I know there's a lot of things that you do focus on, but one of them is, self-talk and
Mm,
that inner voice. Because I think a lot of times when we do fail or we go through some adversity, if we have a really good relationship with our own language, uh,
mm,
we can get right back into focus, or you can get the lesson quicker.
mhm.
And there's a lot of things that can happen as well. But why is, like, when you're working with clients, why is it important to you to help them find that superpower within their inner voice?
First of all, I think majority of us have a tendency to be very, very judgmental to ourselves, and and very much in the inner voice. So it's voice that's not even spoken. Um, so which can create a downward spiral energy,
Right.
which is hard to get out of. So getting real, I really it starts at the beginning with language, because I will, with a client, call them on it in the most loving way possible, like to get them to see, because I don't even think people are aware. Example, when I played golf again with those two women that, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know why
Sorry.
this is not on. Sorry. Um, so I don't, the Vision 54, they had us do this, we had to play 3 holes and we could only say positive things. And we had to play 3 holes where we could only say neutral things. And then we had 3 holes that we could say totally negative. And
Wow.
if you couldn't even, you had to be very honest with your, even if you didn't talk it, you had to rate your, how you were even feeling or thinking. So when you
Wow.
start to realize how much, what I realize is, I'm always saying, I would always give compliments to everybody else, like, oh, good shot, and it wasn't even a good shot.
Right.
Or, and neutral is so hard. Like, wow, that ball was 2 feet to the right. Like, it's very hard to just be factual.
Right.
And then the negativity, forget it. Like, I was very negative to myself, but I can never be negative to someone else. So to understand your own language and how you are towards yourself, I think is so important, because it affects your energy. It goes back to energy.
Oh
It
yeah.
affects how you operate on a daily basis. It affects how you start your morning. Self-talk to me is the thing that builds the confidence. So when you can get aware of what you say to yourself out loud or inside that two voice, that inner chatter, that's where you can learn a lot about how you can shift your energy.
Yeah. I'm a true believer in language is energy. It can either propel us and guide us, or it can completely stop us and paralyze us.
Yeah.
And there's so much. That's why it's important. When we talk about affirmations, especially when someone's going through a tough time and you're trying to get them something simple like, I'm a champion. Well, if they're not feeling like a champion in that moment and they know it, but they like, this doesn't feel right. I'm like, it's not supposed to, but do it 1,000 times. It's
Yep.
not about
Yep.
doing it two or three and then like, oh, I'm a champion. No, you got to rep that thing out, rep it out, rep it out, rep it out, rep it out on different kind of holes, different days, different weeks. And then it gets to that point when you really need to say, I'm a champion. You've done the work to connect it, connect the energy
Yep.
to it.
And connect the feeling. Like, it's not,
Yes.
it's like anything. I mean, a baby doesn't walk right away. I mean, it takes time, and you have to do those repetitions. It's like working out, think of, it's you're gaining that muscle of how to communicate with yourself. And if
Right.
you've had years of being hard on yourself, um you have to unwind that talk. You have to rewire that talk with your brain.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing I notice with the people I work with, they don't even realize they're doing it.
No.
Like, it's not like, oh, let me do it, let me do it. It's catching. I mean, I've worked with this one girl probably 3 years. She still does it, but the energy's different, and she catches herself now. But it just takes time. It's not. And the other thing, I think it's hard, because you're like, oh, change, okay, reframe that language,
Right.
but they don't feel it. So it's very flat, and that goes back to, like, you have to repeat, you have, like, and
Yeah.
in time, like, and also, like, testing out certain languages, like what works, what feels best to you. So
Yeah.
even if I'm like, language also goes to setting goals, like, okay, I'm going to be fit or I'm going to work out for 5 weeks. Well, that doesn't inspire me. So like, how can you use that language, self-talk, to motivate you? Like, wow, what's the end goal of like what I want to feel to do that thing? And it's that self-talk around how we can position those things we want and not make it so daunting. You know what I
Ex-
mean?
Exactly. Exactly. And I've seen this, man, I've seen this with so many people with language, how if you want to see manifestation, like manifest it with your language. Say it out loud. Say it out loud. I mean, there's a great friend of mine who years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, he was saying something outlandish. I was like, really? Like in my mind, I'm like, he really thinks he's gonna do that? And then he's been he's doing it like as we speak right now. And it's just, and so I use that. I'm like, I'm so glad I was so aware that it was pushing up against me, like it rubbed me wrong. But he was just manifesting it, and he kept on connecting it and believing it and saying it and sharing it with people, and it just the universe responded to him.
And I'll say
And
this also when it comes to language, is like, watch who's around you, because that can create, you're contagious. So like when I'm around, I most people will thrive when you're around people that were higher performers and that live a certain way. Then you're like, ah, look at that guy or that person, how they speak, and it starts to motivate you. But if you're hanging around like Debbie Downer, and it's
right.
like, it's contagious, it's contagious. So you have to really watch, like, how's that other person's energy affecting how I start to talk about myself or feel about myself in a certain circumstance.
Right.
So be aware of that. That also can affect your self talk.
100%, 100%. So real quick, let's talk about your ebook, 50 Years, 50 Lessons.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Yeah, I just was trying to. I went a lot through some transitions this year between moving, turning 50. I split with my partner of 6 years, and I just, I was like, there's so many lessons. Well, I've got to go back and reflect. And I've done a lot of writing already, but so I kind of like I put 5 lessons for each theme of my life. And I actually think it was the coolest, even though I was writing this ebook, it was the coolest exercise, because like, when do we really take time to go back and go, wow, I love this moment. What did I learn at this moment? So there's some lessons that Josie, my daughter, taught me. There's lessons through sports. There's lessons through travel, like the things that I love. Like, I would recommend it to anybody, whether you're doing 50 lessons or 10 lessons, to go back and like learn through your journey. Um, and what can you take from that journey forward? So to me, it like gave me, although it's an ebook, it gave me such inspiration for myself to be like, wow, I've come a long way. 'Cause sometimes we don't even congratulate ourselves that we've
Oh,
done good things in the world. We're just moving forward, moving forward. So
yeah,
that's what it's about. It's really about my journey of the things that I love, and the some of it's pain, some of it's joy, some of it's struggle, and taking, it's all around, actually. It's all around mindset. I mean, that's what I believe, and because I
yeah,
don't think we're taught it. We get taught to train our bodies, train a craft, and we forget about our mind.
exactly. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's so important to implement a reflective practice because I mean, sure, you lessons learned, you get to learn so much about your reflections, but for me, it's wisdom. And I always tell younger athletes that the reason why we do the reflective practice so we can lessons learn, what did I do well, what do I need to address, all these things. But you don't have to wait until you're 65 to be wise. You can actually build that wisdom at a young age. So, because I know I wasn't being taught when I was playing football and all the other sports to reflect and get the lessons. It was just like, just keep showing up, you know?
Yep.
And there's other things too when you're hurt, just rub some dirt on and get back on the field. Like
Yep.
so there was a lot of, there wasn't an introspective component. So teaching people now, like, man, when you reflect, you get so much wisdom, and and when you do, that's where light bulbs and aha moments and all sorts of cool shit happens.
You're right. I mean, when we grew up, it wasn't like that. Like sports wasn't like that. It was just get on the field, go.
Yeah,
There wasn't there was some freedom in that because there wasn't so much pressure the way the kids have it now. I think there's a
right.
lot on these kids' plate.
Yep.
So I think stillness, quiet time to reflect is so important because they're so busy.
Hmm.
Um, that making sure there's the grind, the doing part, and then there's the being part, the stillness. And there's got to be some time for stillness to see your growth, see the things you learned, even in a daily basis.
Yeah,
Even if it's just one thing that you said, "Wow, I brushed my teeth today." I don't care what it is. It's like I
yeah,
did something good to make yourself, "Wow, I did something."
yeah,
But I don't think we're taught to celebrate like the wins as much
yeah,
as we can.
for sure.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
Mm.
So when we think about reflection, before we wrap up here, I love this question because every time I do ask this question, there's always this cool experience I get to witness as the host of my show. So when you think about your whole career, whether if it is golf, whether if it is being a mother, everything about your career, what do you think you've learned the most about yourself?
I think the biggest thing I learned is, and I learned this late in my, like, I didn't wake up to really my capabilities until I was in my 30s, but is really, I can do anything I put my mind to. Um, I think in my early before 30, I know, I was really good at sports, but I just was like going through the motions and I was doing what I thought I was capable of, not doing what I wanted and making and creating it. And I would say I'm total 30s on, I just I step into things totally differently that even if I don't know it, I'm going to figure it out. So really, um, I think it's to me. I can if I want it and I have a desire to go after it, I will not hesitate to do it. Um,
Beautiful.
and I life is too short. Life is that's part of it. Like life
Yeah,
is too short,
awesome.
and no guarantees. Yeah, I don't know if I answered the question
No,
very
no,
short, but
to me, it's I call that the possibility mindset. Like,
yeah.
eh, if you feel that there's possibility, man, there's so many opportunities that not only like do you achieve and you achieve them, but if you think things are possible, you attract that. And so there's opportunities. Sometimes you're like, I didn't even know that was coming this way. You're open to it. And then there's other things about being abundant and all that stuff. But
And I'll add to this lastly before we get off. It's like it's not. I don't care even though I want to have an abundant life, I do it because I have a yearning to do it, not to have the thing.
right,
Um, so it's like I get excited about the drive of the experience and the people I meet and like growing rather than yes, I want to get somewhere, but it never goes the way I think it's going to go ever.
right, right,
So
right.
ever. So just know that that's pretty much like the good things don't go the way you think you're going to go. They're going to go
Right,
zigzag.
right,
But
right.
yeah.
So
So
how do my listeners, if they want to learn more about your services, about your ebook, like how do they connect with you?
So yeah, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. You can look up Live Your June. My name also is Wendy Posillico. I won't spell it, but you can look up Live Your June. You'll find me. And you also can email me if you want, Wendy at liveyourjune.com. And we also, every so often, we're doing this Be Intentional challenge, which is all around, and I make it as simple as possible while doing very intentional work. It's a 7-day challenge where we do morning intentional work and reflection, but it's all around my 6 elements of my framework around Live Your June, which you'll learn a lot about your ethos and your mindset and also the stillness of being. So yeah,
Cool.
that's about it. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, really. I love it. I
Awesome.
love this talk. I could go on and on.
Oh man, trust me. I like I said on our call earlier. We could do this for hours. Thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing your story and your energy. I hope everyone reaches out to you and learns more about what you're doing with performers. I think it's really important, especially when we have people like ourselves bouncing the ball back and forth, because there's people
Oh,
can
yeah.
learn from just our 40-minute conversation today.
I love it. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And good luck with your stuff, Grant. You're doing great work
All
in
right,
Vegas this
likewise.
week. I know.
Likewise.